Today, you'll see a ranch so massive, it could fit 7 king ranches inside it. And believe it or not, that's still not the biggest. Of course, the legendary King Ranch of Texas is proudly on this list. Some of these ranches face incredible challenges, from battling droughts and isolation to protecting herds from monster crocodile attacks. This is the countdown of the 10 largest active cattle ranches in the world by land size. We'll break down their size, cattle numbers, incredible histories, and how they're managed. From the deserts of Texas to the vast heart of Australia and beyond, subscribe to Digital Papyrus, and let's dive into the biggest ranches on Earth. We start in South Texas with the King Ranch, the largest ranch in the United States, at about 825,000 acres, 3,340 square kilometers. To put that in perspective, this single ranch is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Founded in 1853 by Captain Richard King, King Ranch has become an icon of American ranching heritage. It's so vast that it sprawls across 4 counties, with terrain ranging from coastal prairies to mesquite brushland. King Ranch isn't just big, it's historic. In the 19th century, King Ranch cowboys, Los Caneños, pioneered some of the first cattle drives north, helping forge the classic image of the American cowboy. Over the decades, the ranch diversified beyond cattle into oil, farming, and even a legendary horse breeding program. But one of its proudest achievements is in cattle breeding. King Ranch developed the Santa Gertrudis, the first truly American breed of beef cattle, recognized in 1940. By crossbreeding Brahman, Zebu bulls with British shorthorn cows, they produced a hardy, red-coated breed suited for the Texas heat. A breed so successful it spread worldwide. It's now widespread even in Australia. Today, King Ranch runs tens of thousands of cattle and remains a family-owned agribusiness, a living legend that still walks the talk of cowboy culture. King Ranch's legacy is so famous, it even has a Ford truck edition named after it. The ranch's sheer size and longevity have made it a living museum of ranching, from old brush clearing tales to modern high-tech range management. And while it's a major beef producer, King Ranch also operates wildlife conservation programs and a ranching institute to train future generations. The next time you grill a steak in Texas, there's a good chance King Ranch had something to do with it. Hidden away in the Rupununi savannas of Guyana, Dadanawa Ranch spans about 1.1 million acres, 4,400 square kilometers. This remote spread, roughly the size of the U.S. state of Rhode Island as well, or about twice the area of Los Angeles County, was once acclaimed as the largest cattle ranch in all of South America. Even today, it's certainly among the continent's biggest, and definitely the most isolated. To reach Datanawa, you must endure a jeep trek that takes 3.5 hours in the dry season, or up to 3 days in the rainy season, when muddy trails turn to muck. Vast open savanna surrounds the ranch compound in Guyana's Rupununi, where cowboys, locally called vaqueros, often ride barefoot and tend to about 6,000 roaming cattle in one of the world's most remote ranches. Datanawa's story reads like a Wild West novel set in the tropics. It began as a trading post around 1865, founded by an adventurer who later sold it, cattle and all, to a Barbadian gold prospector named H.P.C. Melville. By 1919, it had evolved into the Rupununi Development Company's flagship ranch. At its peak, Datanawa reportedly managed tens of thousands of cattle and employed local Amerindian vaqueros, who famously ride with no shoes and incredible skill. The ranch's name comes from a local Amerindian word, Dadanawa, meaning Macaw Spirit Creek Hill, adding to its mystique. Life on Datanawa has always been frontier tough. In this vast savanna bordering the Amazon, cowboys deal with challenges ranging from jaguars prowling the herds to seasonal floods and malaria-carrying mosquitoes. In recent years, economic changes made large-scale cattle operations here less viable, but Datanawa adapted. Today, the De Freitas family, who manage the ranch, have opened it up to ecotourism. Adventurous travelers come for an authentic ranch experience, riding out with vaqueros by day and sleeping under mosquito nets by night, or to spot rare wildlife. Dadanawa may be remote, but its story of resilience in the Guyanese wilderness is globally inspiring. And if you ever visit, bring plenty of bug spray and a sense of adventure. Heading to Australia, we enter a streak of truly colossal cattle stations. Wave Hill Station in the Northern Territory covers about 3.34 million acres, 13,500 square kilometers, an area larger than the state of Connecticut. This station, founded in 1883, lies in the Victoria River District, a landscape of rugged ranges and grassland about 600 kilometers south of Darwin. Wave Hill is the second largest ranch in the Northern Territory and remains an active cattle operation today. Beyond its size, Wave Hill is famous for a milestone in Australian history: the 1966 Gurindji people's Wave Hill Walk-Off. At that time, Wave Hill was owned by a British pastoral company, Vesties, and Aboriginal stockmen were paid unfair wages. On 23 August 1966, led by a head stockman named Vincent Lingiari, some 200 Indigenous workers and their families staged a walk-off strike that lasted 7 years. What began as a fight for equal pay turned into a broader struggle for land rights. The Gurindji people demanded return of their ancestral lands. The protest drew national attention, and in 1975, it culminated in an iconic moment. Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam flew to Wave Hill, knelt, and poured sand into Lingiari's hands as he transferred leasehold title of part of the land back to the Gurindji. This was a breakthrough for Indigenous land rights in Australia, paving the way for historic legal reforms. Current operations and legacy. Today, the descendants of the Gurindji are part owners of Wave Hill Station, and in 2020, they finally won native title to over 5,000 square kilometers of their land. The station still runs cattle, many thousands of head, under a more equitable arrangement, and the community celebrates Freedom Day each August to remember the walk-off. Inaminka Station, in the far northeast of South Australia, spans roughly 3.35 million acres, 13,552 square kilometers. This station sits in the Shileki Desert Channel Country region, a place of red sands, gibber plains, and winding dry creek beds. To visualize the emptiness, Inaminka's expanse is about the size of Lebanon, but with a permanent human population you could count on one hand. Established in 1872, the station's land hugs the Cooper Creek, a river that can go bone dry for years, then flood into a temporary inland sea after rare, heavy rains. This boom and bust cycle defines life on Inaminka. In drought years, station managers must destock or drill deeper into the Great Artesian Basin for bore water. In wet years, cattle fatten on lush grasses that spring up along floodplains. Inaminka is steeped in outback legend. The property lies near where explorers Burke and Wills famously perished in 1861 during an ill-fated expedition, a tragic story every Aussie school kid knows. To this day, weary travelers find refuge at the tiny Inaminka pub, swapping tales under starry skies. Managing a cattle empire here means battling searing heat, over 45 degrees Celsius, 113 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, isolation, and the odd surprise. Like waking to find your station airstrip underwater after a distant rain has sent a flood down the creek. Yet Inaminka endures, producing top-quality beef in a place that truly tests the mettle of those who live there. If you want to experience the real outback, this gigantic station is as real as it gets. Just be prepared to drive hundreds of miles on dirt tracks to get there. Heading west to Australia's Kimberley region, we find Home Valley Station in Western Australia, covering about 3.5 million acres, approximately 1.42 million hectares, when combined with its sister leases. Home Valley alone accounts for approximately 3.46 million acres of that, sprawling along the picturesque Gibb River Road. This land of ancient red cliffs and boab trees is cattle country, and recently, a tourist paradise. Home Valley Station, often branded HV8, was established in 1957, but its modern fame comes from who owns it now: the Indigenous Land and Sea Corporation of Australia. In 1999, the ILSC purchased Home Valley, along with nearby Kurungiay and Durack River stations, on behalf of Aboriginal traditional owners, marking an important step in economic development for local Indigenous communities. Instead of operating only as a classic cattle station, Home Valley was transformed beginning in 2006 into a dual-purpose enterprise, running a productive cattle herd and a thriving tourism venture. Today welcomes guests from around the world to experience life on a huge outback ranch. It features a luxury wilderness lodge and campground, horse riding tours, cattle musters for tourists, and vistas that filmmakers adore. If the scenery looks familiar, it's because parts of the Hollywood movie Australia were filmed here. The station stood in as the fictional Fairway Downs Ranch in the epic cattle drive scenes. Each year, Home Valley also provides training and jobs for Indigenous youth in hospitality and stock work, blending cultural empowerment with business. Don't be fooled by the gourmet bush dinners and infinity pools. At its heart, HV8 is still a working cattle station, complete with dusty rodeo yards and Brahman cross cattle roaming the plains. The station's eastern boundary is the Pentecost River, known for monster saltwater crocodiles, so retrieving wandering cattle can be adventurous. In a region as remote as the Kimberley, Home Valley stands out as a success story where tradition meets tourism. By day you might help ringers, cowboys, muster cattle, and by night sip a cold drink under the Milky Way. Few ranches on this list offer you the chance to vacation on them. Next is Davenport Downs, the largest cattle station in Queensland, Australia, at about 3.73 million acres, 15,000 square kilometers. Together with its adjoining outstation called Springvale, Davenport stretches across the famed Channel Country, a flat expanse of western Queensland crisscrossed by riverbeds that are usually dry. This single ranch is roughly the size of Jamaica, all of it dedicated to raising beef cattle on the open range. From space, NASA satellite imagery 2010 shows vast swaths of Davenport Downs underwater, blue patches, after heavy rains. In Queensland's Channel Country, the Diamantina River and countless channels can flood up to a quarter of the ranch, creating temporary lakes and lush pastures amid the desert. Managing Davenport Downs is a lesson in extremes. Most of the time, its terrain is arid, Mitchell grass downs and clay pans, where hardy Brahman cross cattle nibble whatever sprout they can find. But come a big wet season, look out. Rains upstream turn the Diamantina River into a torrent that fans out for miles. As much as 25% of the property can be flooded in a good year, essentially transforming parts of Davenport into wetlands teeming with grass and wildfowl. The station actually relies on this cycle. Those floods deposit nutrient-rich silt that fuels pastures for the next boom. To survive the dry times, Davenport's managers have sunk numerous artesian bores, tapping the ancient subterranean water of the Great Artesian Basin. With a network of bore-fed water troughs, they've expanded grazing across areas that 19th century drovers couldn't use. Davenport Downs dates back to the late 1860s, when pioneers like John Costello took up leases in this unforgiving country. By 1913, advertisements boasted Davenport was a cattle empire of 3,089 square miles carrying over 20,000 head of cattle, plus 340 horses and even 68 camels. Over time, it changed hands and was aggregated into the behemoth it is today under Paraway Pastoral Company. Modern Davenport runs a highly efficient operation, typically as a grower station, where young cattle, sourced from northern breeding ranches, are fattened on its extensive grasslands. Stockmen here use helicopters and trail bikes as much as horses to muster cattle across the vast distances. Alexandria Station is the Northern Territory's largest cattle ranch, covering about 3.98 million acres, 16,116 square kilometers. Imagine an area bigger than the entire state of Northern Ireland. That's Alexandria. Established way back in 1877, this station sits on the Barkly Tableland, a region of sprawling grassy plains that is cattle heaven. With reliable seasonal rains and rich Mitchell grasses, the Barkly is often compared to the prairies of the U.S., except it's far more remote and dotted with kangaroos and wallabies. Alexandria Station's story is intertwined with the rise of NAPCO, North Australian Pastoral Company, one of Australia's oldest and most respected cattle companies. In fact, Alexandria was one of NAPCO's founding properties and has been run by that company and its successors for nearly a century and a half. Over the generations, the station built up a huge herd of shorthorn cattle and later switched to Brahman and Brahman crossbreeds better suited to the tropics. Alexandria became known for its well-organized operations, including 2 outstation camps, Newcastle Waters and Midiba, to help manage cattle across such a vast area. At times, this single ranch has grazed upwards of 50,000 head of cattle, making it one of the most productive beef properties in the world. Life at Alex, as locals call it, revolves around the seasons. During the dry months, stock crews spread out to repair bores, fences, and muster cattle for sale. When the wet season rains arrive, if they arrive, much of the station becomes impassable bog. So planning is everything. The station even has its own network of dirt airstrips, as mail and medical services often come by plane. Alexandria also takes pride in its station community. It's like a small village, with workers' cottages, workshops, a schoolroom for the staff kids, and a homestead that's an oasis of green lawns amid the savannah. The bronze medal spot goes to Clifton Hill Station in South Australia, which spans approximately 4.2 million acres, 17,000 square kilometers. That's an area nearly the size of Kuwait, all operated as a single cattle ranch. Clifton Hills sits in one of the most remote parts of the continent. At the northern end of the Birdsville Track, an infamous 520-kilometer dirt road that for decades was the only link between this isolated station and civilization. To give a sense of remoteness, the nearest town, Mari, is over 250 kilometers away through Gibber Plain and sand dunes. What makes Clifton Hills unique is that it straddles the diabolically harsh yet fascinating landscape where the Simpson Desert's dunes meet the floodplains of the Channel Country. Part of the station includes the lower reaches of the Diamantina River and Cooper Creek. In dry years, this is a land of dust. Cattle wander widely seeking sparse feed, and station managers rely on artesian bores for water. But occasionally, the northern rains send floodwaters south, and Clifton Hills transforms. Lake Eyre, Australia's biggest salt lake just south of the station, fills up, and green grass carpets swamps that were dry crust. The station's cattle have learned to survive this boom-bust cycle, and so have its people. It's said that on Clifton Hills you need both a fast camel, a nod to the Afghan cameleers who once traversed these parts, and a good boat depending on the season. Clifton Hills Station, established by 1878, Clifton Hills Station has been family-run for much of its existence. For generations, it was accessible only by camel or horseback, until motor vehicles braved the Birdsville Track mid-20th century. Even today, delivering supplies or moving cattle to market is an epic journey, often done with massive road trains, multi-trailer trucks, rumbling down the dusty track. Clifton Hills typically runs about 10,000 to 20,000 head of cattle, but that can swing wildly with the climate. The station relies on huge paddocks, some bigger than entire farms elsewhere, to rotate grazing. Natural waterholes along the Diamantina and Cooper are critical. These river channels, when they flow, sustain life for months afterward in ephemeral waterholes. In big flood years, Clifton Hills crews sometimes switch gears to become fishermen, catching an unexpected bounty of fish that travel down with the flood and get stranded in pools. Clifton Hills made news in the 1950s when legendary mailman Tom Cruise would arrive there as part of his Outback Mail Run, bringing precious supplies and letters after weeks on the track. It was an event eagerly anticipated by station folk. Those days are gone, but the sense of isolation and adventure remains. Running a ranch of this magnitude in such a desert environment is not for the faint-hearted. Yet against all odds, Clifton Hills continues to send robust Australian beef to markets, proving that even the driest corner of the outback can nourish success with enough grit and a little help from an occasional flood. If you've ever heard of one Australian cattle station, it's probably Anna Creek, long famed as the largest cattle ranch on the planet. Anna Creek covers about 5.85 million acres, 23,677 square kilometers, of South Australian outback. Just how big is that? Imagine a ranch is roughly equivalent to the US state of New Hampshire. It's staggeringly large. You could fit more than 300 typical American family farms inside Anna Creek and still have room left over. And every bit of it is active cattle range. Anna Creek Station was established in 1863 and originally raised sheep. But the land, part of the Lake Eyre Basin, proved too arid and dingo-prone for sheep. So by the early 1900s, it switched to cattle, a wise move. The station truly rose to fame under the stewardship of Sir Sidney Kidman, Australia's legendary cattle king, who acquired it in the early 20th century. Kidman amassed an empire of ranches, including Anna Creek, covering 1/50th of Australia. His vision was a network of properties forming a chain of grass so that even in drought, cattle could be moved to feed. Anna Creek was a crown jewel of that empire. In modern times, the station remained with Kidman and Company until 2016, when it was sold to another pastoral family business. Today, Anna Creek runs primarily Santa Gertrudis and Droughtmaster cattle, breeds well adapted to the desert conditions. Running a ranch this size is a logistical feat. The station has a central homestead and outstations. Stockmen use bush airstrips and light planes just to patrol the far-flung corners of the property. In good seasons, Anna Creek can carry 15,000 to 20,000 head of cattle, but in harsh droughts, that number drops significantly to protect the land. Anna Creek relies on artesian bores tapping underground water since rainfall is scarce and surface water ephemeral. We've reached number 1, and it's a mind-blower. The largest active cattle farm on Earth isn't in the wide-open outback or the American West, but in northeastern China. The Mudanjiang City Mega Farm in Heilongjiang Province is a dairy ranch of epic proportions, about 22.5 million acres. That is roughly the size of the entire country of Portugal, in one farm. Let that sink in. This operation dwarfs any other ranch on this list by a huge margin. In fact, Mudanjiang is so large that it's often cited as the biggest farm of any kind in the world. The Mudanjiang Mega Farm was established in the 2010s as a strategic project to boost China's domestic milk production. It was a response to growing Chinese demand for dairy and a desire to rely less on imported milk powder. With cooperation from Russian partners, The farm's land holdings expanded rapidly near the China-Russia border. Today, it manages an eye-popping 100,000 dairy cows, or more by some accounts, on its lands. These aren't free-ranging beef cattle like in Australia, but high-yield dairy cows housed in modern facilities across the property. The farm uses cutting-edge tech, from automated milking carousels to computer-run feeding systems to handle the massive scale. Mudanjiang produces an estimated 800 million liters of milk per year, enough to fill over 300 Olympic swimming pools. Much of this milk is processed into powder for both Chinese consumers and export. In fact, the farm has been a key supplier of milk powder to Russia, especially after Russia's domestic dairy shortfalls. This single mega ranch has thus become an important player in global dairy trade. Managing it is more akin to running a city than a traditional ranch. It has thousands of workers, veterinarians, nutritionists, and its own feed crop operations. The cows are kept in large barns and feedlots scattered over the enormous area, and advanced waste recycling and methane management systems are used to handle environmental impact. Important when you have mountains of cow manure to deal with. To truly grasp Mudanjiang's scale, consider this. It's about 4 times larger than Anna Creek, the world's biggest cattle station, and about 27 times the size of King Ranch in Texas. It's so large that some sections serve different purposes: dairy in one area, beef cattle in another, feed crop cultivation elsewhere. The farm's creation marked a shift in thinking about ranches. We often picture ranches as dusty expanses with cowboys, but Mudanjiang is more like an agricultural megafactory, marrying land and technology on an unprecedented scale. It demonstrates how global agriculture is evolving. Even cattle ranches can be supersized and high-tech. Love it or worry about it, Mudanjiang is #1 in size by far, and it's active right now, pumping out milk at a nation-feeding scale.